Risk of Rain 2 is a problem. I'm busy, I've got stuff to do, but this game has managed to worm its way in deep. I have not been grabbed by a roguelite in this way for a long time, and apparently the same goes for many people, with this game having amassed a staggering 650,000 players in its first week. So, with that, let's dive into Risk of Rain 2. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So, Risk of Rain 2 makes for a hell of a story, really. Its predecessor, a game that I also loved, was well regarded and it sold well, but nothing close to what Risk of Rain 2 has been able to do. All of this from a game that initially looked a little bit rough. I mean, the transition from a beloved 2D game into a 3D one, that really could have went wrong, and it sure is something that's went wrong for other studios in the past. Risk of Rain 2 launched into early access on the 28th of March 2019, rapidly hitting the 500,000 player mark over its launch weekend, a feat made possible by them launching the game with a buy one get one free offer, designed of course to get groups of friends playing the game together. Now it did have some help being published by Gearbox Publishing and actually having a mention on their stream that went out to 200,000 people. Of course, the game turned out to be fantastic, and that means that over its launch week, those 500,000 players turned into 650,000. So we're a week on from that point. This game could be over 700,000 sales, maybe 800,000. They have sold at least 0.5 million copies of this game for the ticket price of $19.99, netting them just shy of $10 million on Steam, so about $7 million after the cut. Of course, by crossing that $10 million mark, they're now going to be working within Steam's 25% revenue split, and that is a rare feat for an indie developer, something that's indicative of their innovative launch strategy and the quality of this game. I mean, this is growth that some AAAs would be jealous of. I mean, hell, even T-Pain is playing it. So, Risk of Rain 2, it entered development in late 2016 following the release of Risk of Rain in 2014, with that then being ported around to various other platforms. The team actually started off as a two-man out-of-university Kickstarter before being picked up by Chucklefish, which of course led to Risk of Rain 1, which was extremely successful, and then now they've got Risk of Rain 2 on their hands. An incredible success story, now standing at a 95% approval rating on Steam from over 10,500 reviewers, basically as good as one could hope for. So, that's the story of Risk of Rain 2, but what about the game itself? Well, Risk of Rain 2, being the sequel to Risk of Rain, is similar in many ways. You land in a crash pod from a ship and you fight your way across various different areas, with each one having a boss at the end. The economic systems of each game are actually very similar as well, but Risk of Rain 2 has one massive difference. It's 3D, and I was originally skeptical about this when I first heard it. From playing it though, I could not be happier. They have translated what I loved about Risk of Rain into 3D perfectly, indeed elevating many of their mechanics in the process, especially with the various characters feeling fantastic with the game's new perspective, and the revamped enemy designs feeling just like they generate a lot more gameplay, really. Now, you begin by selecting your character. Initially, only the Commando is available, but you pretty soon unlock more. You've got like the Ranger, there's an Engineer type, a melee sword guy, amongst others, with more coming as early access progresses. Each class has a right-click ability, they have an R ability with a utility in the Shift key, and their primary attacks all vary wildly, with the sword guy being obviously the most different of all. Hoppo Games have managed to make every character feel really, really unique. Like, the class diversity here is top-notch, with each one delivering a different gameplay experience, and that really helps this game be replayable. Personally, I've loved the Glass Cannon Ranger, and I like the sword as well, although getting used to using the sword does take a bit more work. Now, the abilities tend to have a bit more depth than first meets the eye, and importantly, the classes all scale fantastically within a game. So let's just talk about playing a game of Risk of Rain 2. After selecting your character, you land into a zone. These zones are handcrafted, but the layouts are actually randomized of, items and stuff. Now, your goal is to find the portal to the next zone, but it's not that simple, because you'll want to collect items. Now, items are found in chests, and they have costs based on whether it's a white or green rarity item, with oranges having a low drop rate, and actually sometimes being able to come out of a super expensive golden chest that you'll find later on. Now, opening all these chests costs gold. You get gold from killing enemies. Enemies will spawn in. But there's one more factor, the timer. And this is really a defining part of the franchise and a super innovative thing from the team. As the timer ticks up, difficulty increases. This persistently happens throughout your entire run, meaning you always want to move fast. So whether you want to farm a zone 100% or just get to the next zone as quickly as possible, that's up to you, but you always feel like you're on the clock and you have to play the game hard and fast. Of course, though, within a zone, there's more than just item chests. You will find shrines of combat, which will summon in powerful enemies to fight, as well as shrines of the mountain. These will actually cause additional bosses to spawn in at the portal, giving you a harder fight with greater rewards. It can be pretty scary. Okay, so you've got your items, you got a few drones, you farmed up, and you've just interacted with the portal to move on. So once you do that, a red area spawns, and the boss spawns. While you're in the red area, you'll charge the portal. And to use the portal, you need to defeat the boss and have it fully charged. Initially, this is easy, but it becomes extremely frantic in the later levels. And really, that's the standard format of Risk of Rain 2, but there's so much more here. Items are extremely important in this game, and they have a very interesting relationship to RNG. Often in games like The Binding of Isaac or Enter the Gungeon, the RNG really, between getting a synergy or not, is massive. Well, for the most part in Risk of Rain, you get so many items that it averages out. But with your path of progression feeling a bit different between runs. Now, this is something that I think works well because they have very strong class-based gameplay, which does always make sure the baseline you have varied mechanics to use. Of course, what helps all of this is the item design. On their own, they're pretty normal, but it's when they come together that you really see the great design here. So you have items that maybe increase your attack speed, that cause enemies to explode on death, or to maybe trigger a homing dagger, whenever they die. But here's the great thing about Risk of Rain 2. They all basically trigger off each other. So there's times where you can just fire one arrow from your ranger and then have all of the different item effects cascade off each other, obliterating a wave of enemies. It's a fairly unique power fantasy that's enabled by just how many items that the game gives you, how many enemies the game throws at you, and the interactivity between those items. It's just endlessly satisfying, blasting your way through insane numbers of enemies, watching all the gold roll in, and then putting that into even more items. You then have items that can even interact with your class abilities, such as giving you extra charges of your movement utility ability. Now, in practice, this once meant for me that I had 4 charges of Blink, I had an item that gave me a speed boost whenever I jumped, and this all then combined with in and out of combat movement speed increase items, and also an item that gave me multiple jumps. So I was just zipping around the place with insane movement. So basically, the character progression that I had within 30 minutes with this run was insane. And that really is the core of just why immediately after dying, you want to go right back in and try again. The act of playing this game is just so darn satisfying, and with runs often lasting between 20 and 50 minutes, it's a hell of a time vampire. Oh, and then you also have equipment items. You've got things like the rocket launcher, guaranteed crates, a black hole vortex, and then on top of that, you actually have regular items that can give you additional charges for your equipment. As you can see, it really is the stacking and the interaction of these items that works so well here. And so far, there are a number of worlds in the game. Each one of them is the same geometry every time, but a different layout in terms of, items and all that stuff. They're quite varied, both in terms of their visuals and their design, and there are more on the way. But really, I think it's the cascading character progression combined with that constant feeling of it being a speedrun. I think that's what makes this game so engaging. You just get into a flow and you feel like you can't stop, and it's a hell of a design achievement. Past that though, there's a lot of depth and extra systems. Enemies can drop lunar coins. These can be used for rare chests that give you a super rare item. They can be really game defining, such as having halved health but doubled damage, or maybe receiving far more healing but have it be spread out. These play into a metagame with a shop that can be accessed in the later levels, so there's a lot there. Now, collecting these coins is a bit annoying, but thankfully it's something that the developers are actually planning to fix up. Then just in terms of the core combat design, I'm not saying it gets exactly what Doom gets, but the great thing about, say, Doom's combat is that you have enemies that are all very different, which means the different combinations of those enemies slot together in, ways that created sort of a different resultant gameplay feel. Well, in this, you've got the floating head guys that zap you, you've got the big golems that zap you, you've got the projectile firebomb imps, you've got the people who teleport and try to attack you, you've got the bulls who charge at you. Basically, the enemy variety is enough such such that different combinations of enemies constantly feels different to fight, and I think that is very important in keeping the feeling of variety for combat, and thankfully that's something this game does really well. So really, to sum this up, this is a great third-person game with varied characters and roguelite progression that is executed fantastically. It's a wonderful evolution over the original Risk of Rain, and like its predecessor, it's also backed up with incredible music, some of which you will have heard in this video. Personally, well, even though it's only launched into early access with a year to go, I love this game. I'd say if you like Risk of Rain 1, you'll probably love Risk of Rain 2. If you like either roguelites or third-person action games, you'll probably have a lot of fun here as well. And if you really want a multiplayer experience with your friends, it's a bit frantic and crazy, then I hear this is fantastic too. It's a very promising early access release, and it's a game that I know I'm going to be returning to over time. So there you go, and really this video is a bit of a model for what a sort of impression/review short form video would look like from me. Right now, I only have the time to do these quite rarely, but with the help from our patrons, we should be able to build out the team more, and that would make content like this a more regular fixture on the channel. So that's kind of how it slots in, and a massive thank you to them for supporting this content. Thank you for watching this video, and with that, I'll see you next time.